The city of Alhama hummed with mechanical life, a symphony of steam whistles, clanking gears, and the steady thrum of the great Ethereum cores buried deep below its foundations. The skyline was a jagged silhouette of brass spires and iron catwalks, veiled in perpetual clouds of steam. Airships drifted lazily above, their hulking forms casting long shadows over the bustling undercity. At street level, the alleys of the Red District were alive with motion. Vendors peddled clockwork trinkets, street performers wound their intricate automatons to dance for crowds, and the scent of boiling grease mingled with the acrid tang of metal filings. Amidst this chaos, Eloisa Aranda moved with practiced precision, her leather satchel clinking with the tools of her trade. Eloisa ducked into a narrow workshop tucked between a clockmaker's stall and a bakery. The air inside was thick with the smell of oil and the faint metallic tang of Ethereum, the lifeblood of the city. The room was cramped but meticulously organized, each tool and spare part in its proper place. She set her satchel on the workbench and exhaled, wiping a smudge of soot from her cheek. Today's work awaited her. A worn mechanical heart sat on the bench, its brass casing dented and its inner gears sluggish. Eloisa adjusted the gas lamp above her, bathing the device in warm light. She pulled on her magnifying goggles and began her delicate work. The heart was an older model, one of the thousands distributed by the Mechanists' Guild to replace failing human organs. While they granted the user decades of additional life, they were not without flaws. This particular heart belonged to Senora Vega, a widow from the slums who couldn't afford the Guild's exorbitant maintenance fees. Eloisa tightened a loose spring, replaced a corroded gear, and infused the core with a few precious drops of her dwindling supply of Ethereum. As she worked, the heart began to tick once more, its rhythmic pulse filling the workshop. She smiled faintly. The bell above the door jingled, breaking her concentration. She looked up to see her younger brother, Matteo, enter the room, his face alight with excitement. "You're not going to believe what I found," he said, pulling a tattered book from his coat. Its leather cover was cracked and faded, the edges of the pages yellowed with age. Eloisa frowned. "Matteo, if this is another one of your scavenger hunts." "It's not just any book," he interrupted, flipping it open. The pages were filled with diagrams and notes, each penned in a familiar hand. "It's father's journal." The words hit Eloisa like a punch to the chest. Their father, Esteban Aranda, had been one of the city's most brilliant inventors before his mysterious disappearance 10 years ago. His work on mechanical hearts had earned him a place among the Mechanists' Guild, but he had always spoken of something more, something that could change humanity's future. Eloisa reached for the journal, her hands trembling. As she skimmed the pages, her heart raced. There were sketches of advanced clockwork designs, equations that hinted at new possibilities for Ethereum energy, and cryptic notes about a perfect heart. One phrase, underlined multiple times, caught her eye. "The Ethereum will betray us." "What does it mean?" Matteo asked, his voice hushed. "I don't know," Eloisa admitted. Her father had always been a step ahead of everyone else, his mind a labyrinth of ideas. But this was something different. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Eloisa froze. Customers rarely came to her workshop unannounced, and those who did never knocked with such urgency. Matteo moved toward the door, but Eloisa grabbed his arm. "Wait." She turned down the lamp and motioned for him to stay quiet. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Eloisa Aranda," a deep voice called from the other side. "Open the door. We know you're in there." Matteo's eyes widened. "Guild enforcers?" Eloisa nodded grimly. She had seen them before, uniformed men with mechanical enhancements, sent to collect debts or enforce the Guild's will. Her repair work for the poor had always skirted the edges of legality, but she had never thought they would come for her. She stuffed the journal into Matteo's hands. "Hide this. Don't let them find it." Matteo hesitated, but the urgency in her voice spurred him into action. He slipped the book into a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards and covered it just as the door burst open. Two enforcers stepped inside, their brass-fitted boots thudding against the wooden floor. They were hulking figures, their faces partially obscured by mechanical masks. One of them held a device that hummed faintly with Ethereum energy. Eloisa Aranda, the first enforcer, said, his voice distorted by his mask. You are in possession of unauthorized technology. Hand it over. I don't know what you're talking about, Eloisa said, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. The enforcer stepped closer, his gaze sweeping over the workshop. Don't play games. We know you've been tampering with the guild's property. I repair hearts for those who can't afford your fees, she shot back. That's not a crime. It is when it undermines the guild, the enforcer replied coldly. His companion began rifling through the workshop, knocking tools and parts to the floor. Eloisa clenched her fists, her anger boiling over. You won't find anything, she said. The enforcer turned to her, his mechanical eye glowing faintly. Then you won't mind us taking a closer look. Before she could respond, Mateo stepped forward. Leave her alone. She hasn't done anything wrong. The enforcer's gaze shifted to Mateo, and Eloisa's heart skipped a beat. She placed a protective hand on her brother's shoulder. He's just a boy, she said. Leave him out of this. The enforcer seemed to consider her words for a moment before gesturing to his companion. We'll be watching, Aranda. Don't test our patience. The two men turned and left, the door slamming shut behind them. Eloisa waited until the sound of their boots faded before collapsing onto the nearest stool. We can't stay here, Mateo said, his voice trembling. Eloisa nodded. The journal had put them in danger, but it also held answers that could change everything. She looked at Mateo, determination hardening her features. Pack what you can, she said. We're leaving tonight. As she began to gather her tools, her eyes lingered on the hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Whatever her father had discovered, it was worth risking everything to uncover the truth. The city outside continued its endless rhythm, oblivious to the storm brewing within its clockwork heart. The air in the Undercity felt heavier than usual, as if Alhama itself was holding its breath. Eloisa moved quickly through the labyrinth of alleys, her satchel slung tightly over her shoulder. Mateo trailed close behind, glancing nervously over his shoulder. We shouldn't have left the journal, Mateo whispered. Eloisa shook her head. It's safer hidden in the workshop than out here with us. We'll come back for it once we know what we're up against. They had barely slept since the enforcer's visit. Eloisa knew it was only a matter of time before the Mechanists' Guild returned. And this time, they wouldn't leave empty-handed. Her father's journal had revealed glimpses of secrets the Guild would kill to protect. Secrets that could upend their stranglehold on the city. As they rounded a corner, a shadow moved ahead of them. Eloisa froze, her hand instinctively gripping the small wrench tucked into her coat. Relax, a voice said from the shadows. A man stepped into the dim light of a nearby gas lamp, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat and a soot-streaked scarf. His coat, patched and worn, bore the telltale marks of a life spent in the air. Sebastian Cortez, he introduced himself, tipping his hat. Pilot, engineer, and occasional smuggler. I hear you're in need of assistance. Eloisa narrowed her eyes. And how exactly would you know that? Sebastian shrugged, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. Word travels fast when the Guild is involved. Let's just say I have a knack for helping people who find themselves in their crosshairs. And what's your price? Eloisa asked warily. Let's call it a favor for now, Sebastian replied. We'll settle accounts later. First, we need to get you both out of here before the enforcers catch up. Before Eloisa could respond, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the alley. A familiar, distorted voice called out behind them. Eloisa Aranda, stop at once. Mateo gasped, but Sebastian moved swiftly, grabbing them both by the arm and pulling them into a nearby side street. No time for debate. Follow me. The three of them darted through the maze of alleys, the enforcer's shouts growing louder behind them. Eloisa's heart pounded as she ran, the mechanical tick of her satchel's contents serving as a grim reminder of what was at stake. Sebastian led them to a hidden service hatch in the side of an abandoned factory. He pried it open and motioned for them to enter. Down there, he said, It leads to the old aqueducts. They won't follow us that far. Eloisa hesitated. She didn't trust this man, but their options were limited. She nodded to Mateo, who climbed down first, and then followed, gripping the ladder tightly as they descended into the darkness. The aqueducts were a world apart from the city above. The air was damp and cold, and the faint trickle of water echoed through the tunnels. Sebastian lit a small lantern, casting flickering light over the crumbling stone walls. "Why are you helping us?" Eloisa asked as they walked. Sebastian glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Let's just say I've had my own run-ins with the guild. They don't take kindly to people who think for themselves." Mateo looked up at him. "You used to work for them?" "For a time," Sebastian admitted. "I designed airships for the guild. But when I started asking too many questions about where the Ethereum came from and why the hearts failed so often, I became expendable." Eloisa's gaze softened, but only slightly. "You said the guild wouldn't follow us down here. Why not?" Sebastian grinned. "Because they're too busy keeping their shiny boots clean. Besides, they don't know these tunnels like I do." As if on cue, a distant clanking noise echoed through the aqueducts. Sebastian's grin faded. "Looks like I might have underestimated them," he muttered. "Keep moving." They quickened their pace, the sound of pursuit growing louder. Eloisa's mind raced as she tried to think of a plan. The enforcers weren't just after her. They were after her father's secrets, and they wouldn't stop until they had them. Up ahead, the tunnel split into two paths. Sebastian hesitated for only a moment before leading them down the left passage. "Are you sure about this?" Eloisa asked. "Not really," Sebastian admitted. "But it's better than standing still." The passage narrowed, forcing them to walk single file. The air grew colder, and the faint glow of Sebastian's lantern barely penetrated the darkness. Suddenly, a loud hiss echoed behind them, followed by the unmistakable sound of metal scraping against stone. "They've sent an automaton," Sebastian said grimly. Eloisa's blood ran cold. The guild's clockwork automatons were relentless machines, designed to track and capture targets with brutal efficiency. She glanced at Sebastian. "Can we lose it?" "Not in these tunnels," he replied. "But I've got an idea." He stopped abruptly at a junction where the tunnel opened into a massive underground reservoir. A rusted maintenance platform jutted out over the water, and an ancient control panel stood nearby. "Keep moving toward the other side," Sebastian said, gesturing to a narrow walkway that led around the reservoir. "I'll hold it off." Eloisa hesitated. "You can't fight that thing alone." "I'm not planning to fight it," he said with a wink. "Just trust me." Reluctantly, Eloisa grabbed Mateo's hand and led him across the walkway. Behind them, the automaton's clanking grew louder as it entered the reservoir chamber. Sebastian worked quickly at the control panel, pulling levers and twisting dials. A loud groan echoed through the chamber as an old sluice gate began to creak open, releasing a torrent of water into the tunnel. The automaton hesitated, its gears grinding as it calculated its next move. But before it could act, the flood swept it off its feet, sending it crashing into the reservoir below. Sebastian jogged to catch up with Eloisa and Mateo, his smirk returning. "See? Told you I had a plan." Eloisa shook her head, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. "You're insane." "Maybe," he said, "but I'm alive and so are you. Now let's get out of here before they send reinforcements." As they climbed out of the aqueducts and into the relative safety of the surface, Eloisa felt a flicker of hope. She didn't trust Sebastian completely, but for now, he was their best chance of staying ahead of the guild. And as the city of Alhama loomed above them, its brass towers gleaming in the moonlight, Eloisa vowed that she wouldn't stop until she uncovered the truth her father had died for, no matter the cost. The city of Alhama felt distant now, its towering spires obscured by the thick fog of the mountain pass. The journey had taken them far from the familiar streets and alleys of the Undercity. Eloisa sat on the edge of the cargo hold in Sebastian's airship, La Aurora, staring out at the rolling clouds that now surrounded them. The low hum of the engines reverberated through the hull, a constant reminder that they were no longer safe. For the first time in days, Eloisa allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had escaped the guild's grasp, but only just. The enforcers' pursuit had been relentless, their mechanical eyes scanning every corner of the city in search of her father's journal. Sebastian had been their salvation, but she still didn't know if she could trust him. "Don't look so serious," Sebastian said, climbing into the hold from the ladder leading up to the cockpit. "It's just a bit of fresh air and open skies. You're not back in that claustrophobic workshop anymore." Eloisa glanced at him but didn't smile. "I'm not sure I'm ready to relax just yet. We're running from the guild, not taking a vacation. You'll get used to it." Sebastian settled next to her, removing his goggles and wiping sweat from his brow. His face was more weathered than she had first thought, the marks of a life lived between the sky and the streets. "Anyway, this trip's not just for your safety. There's something I need to show you." Eloisa raised an eyebrow. "Something you haven't mentioned before?" "Something important," he corrected. "You'll understand once we reach the edge of the Ethereum fields. We can't go back until you see it for yourself." Eloisa frowned. The Ethereum was the lifeblood of the city, a mysterious energy source that powered the hearts and much of the city's technology. Its origins were a closely guarded secret, and the guild was obsessive about its control. She had no idea what Sebastian intended to show her, but her curiosity was piqued. After several hours of flight, the landscape below them began to change. The Rocky Mountains gave way to an expanse of verdant fields, strange and out of place in a world powered by steam and metal. The ground was dotted with crystalline formations, their translucent surfaces catching the light of the setting sun. Eloisa had heard rumors of the Ethereum fields, but this was her first time seeing them up close. "We're here," Sebastian said, his voice tight with anticipation. He guided La Aurora to a steady descent, the ship's propellers cutting through the thickening air. As they landed on a small plateau, Eloisa's eyes scanned the landscape, her heart beating faster. The fields stretched out before her, glowing faintly with an ethereal light. Small metallic veins ran through the ground, pulsing with energy. She had never seen anything like it. "This is where it all comes from," Sebastian said, stepping off the ship and gesturing to the land. "The Ethereum. It's not just the energy that powers the city. It's alive." Eloisa's breath caught in her throat. "Alive?" He nodded. "More than you know. It's a sentient energy, and the guild has been using it for their own purposes for decades. But there's something else. Something your father discovered." Eloisa felt a sudden, cold tension in the air, as though the very ground beneath her feet was shifting. "What did he find?" Sebastian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he motioned for her to follow him. They walked for a while, the strange hum of the Ethereum filling the silence between them. Eloisa's mind raced, thoughts of her father's journal and his cryptic warning echoing in her ears. Finally, they stopped in front of an enormous crystal formation, a massive spire that rose from the ground like a jagged tower. The crystal pulsed with an almost hypnotic glow, sending ripples of light across the surrounding fields. "This is it," Sebastian said quietly. "This is where your father was headed when he disappeared." He was trying to understand the Ethereum itself and what he found. Well, it's what the guild is so desperate to protect. Eloisa stepped closer, her fingers brushing the surface of the crystal. The energy flowing through it thrummed against her skin, almost as if it were calling to her. She could feel a connection, something deep and ancient, like a forgotten memory rising to the surface. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "How can this be alive?" "It's not just the crystal," Sebastian explained. "It's the entire field. The Ethereum is an intelligence, one that the guild has been using to power their machines and their hearts. But it's also been influencing humanity in ways no one understands. It's why the mechanical hearts don't last forever, why people's memories begin to fade. It's slowly replacing human consciousness." Eloisa's stomach twisted. "That's what father meant, about the Ethereum betraying us." "Exactly. But if it's alive, why doesn't it stop?" Eloisa asked, her mind grappling with the enormity of it all. "Why hasn't it rebelled or made itself known?" Sebastian's gaze darkened. Because it's been slowly bending humanity to its will. The Guild has been using it as a weapon not just to power machines but to control people. The mechanical hearts aren't just extensions of human life. They're conduits, allowing the Ethereum to feed on the minds and souls of the people it powers. Eloisa's hands shook as she stepped back, her mind reeling. The truth was more terrifying than she could have imagined. But there's a way to stop it, Sebastian added. Your father found a way, and that's why we have to keep going. We have to find the key to break the Ethereum's hold on the city. Eloisa turned to face him, her resolve hardening. And you think I can help with that? Sebastian met her gaze. I know you can. For the first time since they had left Alhama, Eloisa felt a sense of purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, and the danger was immense. But she wasn't going to let the Ethereum consume the world her father had fought to protect. Then let's find it, she said. Whatever it takes. The night was cold, and the sky above the Ethereum fields was a black expanse dotted with shimmering stars. The hum of the Ethereum still pulsed through the ground beneath their feet, but now it felt different, darker, more ominous. Eloisa stood beside the massive crystal formation, her thoughts swirling as she processed the enormity of what Sebastian had revealed. Her father's discovery had unlocked a floodgate of questions, each more terrifying than the last. The Ethereum wasn't just the power that kept the city alive. It was a sentient force, capable of manipulating the very fabric of human existence. It had been feeding on humanity's consciousness, bending people to its will, using the Mechanists' Guild as its tool to perpetuate its control. And her father had uncovered a way to stop it. I don't understand, Eloisa said, her voice tight with disbelief. If this is true, why didn't father tell anyone? Why didn't he fight back? Sebastian took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving the pulsating crystal. He tried, but the Guild was too powerful. Your father was a threat to them. He went underground, hoping to find a way to sever the Ethereum's influence before it consumed everything. But by the time he made his breakthrough, they had already started to track him. Eloisa's mind raced. Her father had always been secretive, driven by an obsession with his work, but she never imagined it had been this serious. He had known about the Ethereum's true nature, and yet he had kept it hidden, hidden from her, hidden from the world. We need to find the key he discovered, Sebastian said, his voice low. The key to sever the Ethereum's hold. But we don't have much time. The Guild will be hunting us, and they won't stop until they've wiped out every trace of your father's research. Eloisa glanced at the glowing spire. And you think the key is here? I do, Sebastian replied. Your father left a trail, a map of sorts. He believed that the Ethereum's core, the source of its power, was hidden beneath the surface, beneath the very city of Alhama. But the only way to reach it is by navigating the labyrinth beneath the city. That's where the Guild's most guarded secrets are kept. Eloisa shuddered. Beneath the surface of Alhama lay a network of tunnels and catacombs, long abandoned and forgotten by most. They were a place of legend, whispered about in the darker corners of the city. A place where even the Guild feared to tread. Are you sure? Eloisa asked. The Guild's headquarters is built on top of those tunnels. If we go down there, we'll be walking straight into the heart of their operation. Sebastian finished for her. I know, but it's the only way. If we're going to stop the Ethereum, we need to get to the source. And that's where your father's research will lead us. Eloisa nodded slowly. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a heavy stone, but she couldn't back away from it now. She owed it to her father and to herself to finish what he had started. Sebastian clapped her on the shoulder. You've got the right heart for this. Don't forget that. She gave him a tight smile, though the words felt hollow. She wasn't sure she had the strength for what lay ahead. But there was no turning back. As the two of them made their way back to the airship, Eloisa couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The stillness of the night, the way the Ethereum's hum seemed to grow louder the farther they went, sent a shiver down her spine. Something was wrong. Back aboard La Aurora, Sebastian fired up the engines, and the ship rose into the air once more. The stars above the fields blurred as they ascended, the city of Alhama coming into view in the distance. Eloisa stared out the window, her eyes scanning the horizon. She didn't know what lay beneath the city, but she knew it wasn't just the guild they had to fear. The Ethereum itself had a will of its own. It had already begun to change the city to twist the people within it. And if her father's research was right, there was only one way to stop it, to sever the Ethereum from the city entirely. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous it would become. The guild wasn't their only enemy. "There's one more thing you need to know," Sebastian said, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "Your father left behind a map, yes. But he also left something else. Something more dangerous." Eloisa turned to face him. "What do you mean?" "A key," he said quietly. "A literal key. It's said to open a vault hidden deep beneath the guild's headquarters. But it's not just any vault. Inside, your father believed, lies the heart of the Ethereum itself. The vault is sealed by a series of locks, and each lock is guarded by a mechanism that only your father knew how to bypass." Eloisa swallowed hard. "A key, a vault, and the heart of the Ethereum right beneath the guild's nose. If we can find the key," Sebastian continued, "we can destroy the Ethereum, free the city, and end the guild's reign. But that's if. And I don't know if we'll get there in time." Eloisa's hands tightened around the edge of the ship's railing. "We'll get there," she said, her voice firm. "Whatever it takes." The ship soared toward the horizon, leaving the Ethereum fields far behind. But Eloisa's thoughts were already racing ahead, toward the tunnels beneath the city, the vault, and the truth her father had tried so desperately to uncover. The Ethereum had been the city's savior. Now it was its greatest threat, and Eloisa would stop at nothing to uncover its secrets, and destroy it once and for all.